Welcome back to Ctrl-Alt-Dev. I'm Paul Rhodes.
And I'm Sean Sale.
And in this episode, we dig into something we've been building quietly in the background that's starting to feel like rocket fuel for our project delivery and business. And it's what we're calling the AI brain. But before we get into the nerdy bits, Sean, how's your week been?
Yeah, this week's been focusing on progress and polishing across our teams. We've got the Atlas software, as you know. It's a SaaS software application. We've got inventory, another SaaS system. It's all been about delivering smart solutions, keeping clients happy, pushing new features, Paul, that make life easier for sellers and developers alike. So we've been watching, refining, giving our projects the momentum they need, whether it's testing the latest server updates, finalizing design tweaks, or prepping the next product launch. Every small move counts, right? So let's stay sharp, support each other, and end the week stronger than we started it is my motto. What about yourself, Paul? What have you been up to?
Yeah, mine's a bit of a confession. I just I went to the pub again on Monday, so it's where all the best conversations happen. So I belong to a local group, and there's a couple of guys in that who are doing like amazing things with AI. So I thought I'll pick their brains. So Monday night we went to the local, had a few jars, and literally I have a daily existential crisis over AI. Like, you know,
so it's like an AI drinking club.
Yeah, so we spent about 3 hours just literally chewing the fat over both the opportunity and also the threat. And I think it was just fascinating because we're all in different industries. So for me, it was so good to hear from different businesses, their angle on everything. So yeah, that was probably the highlight of the week. So not necessarily a technical thing, but more of a related to this podcast. So I'll share some of those things that have come up as well during this episode because I think it all interlinks. So that's pretty much my highlight.
Brilliant.
Cool.
So obviously today's topic, Paul, is something that I'm going to take a back seat on this one more than and let you sort of fill us and the listeners with some fantastic knowledge about what it is, what we refer to as AI brain. Obviously AI being artificial intelligence, but a brain, a neural network, is it, and really understanding what you're using it for at Green Gorilla Apps every day. Because I've got a certain idea on what you're doing, but we need to really delve into this to kind of help our customers and our support members time out, to help our listeners understand exactly what it is and what you're using it for. So take it away, Paul.
Yeah, so I guess the best place to start is just to take you back to where the idea kind of originated for us. I mean, we're calling it the AI brain, which sounds very grand, but I think when you actually boil it down, it's once AI started to gain memory, everything changed. So, if you take you back a few years when everyone started using it, you do prompts and people were learning what prompting was. And it was really like, even if you were doing multi-shot prompting, it was probably like a new chat window in whatever AI tool you wanted to use, and you'd have to give it all the information every single time. And then over the intervening years, if we look at chat explicitly, they've rolled out GPTs, so custom GPTs, and they've rolled out projects. So we stepped back probably, I think 18 months ago, this has been going on, and we were looking specifically at projects. And so, as you'll know, Sean, with any project, you have contracts, you have specifications, and we spoke about in episode 2. You'll have wireframes, you'll have user stories, you'll have everything that goes into the project brief, and then you'll have changes throughout, so change request, estimates, decisions, meeting notes, everything that goes into that project. We use Notion, so we basically file all of that stuff and we keep a record. And the notion of the AI brain was simply, why haven't we got a tool that we can query and ask questions, and how could we use that? So if we had the all-seeing eye, like the Oracle kind of vision that knew everything there was to know about a project, how would that help us? And you start to think, okay, so if a client requests a new feature, we can have a conversation with this. It understands the limitations. It understands the code. We can actually put the code into the LLM as well in a secure way. And there's different tools, like one called RepoMix that does it. It exports code bases for LLMs, which is phenomenal. And you can also connect it real time. So we're using stuff with Claude. So fundamentally, there's a lot of knowledge, isn't there, in any project? And if we could create something that has a memory, that knows everything about the project, it will make us more efficient, and it will make us produce better results and higher quality for our clients, because it ultimately reduces key person dependency. We've all worked on projects where there's a project lead who knows more than anyone else. And so in order to answer a question, it's when are they available to have a conversation with a developer, with a project manager, whatever. And often in my business, that's me. My job title should be blocker. That's basically what I do. I'm a full-time blocker in my business. So the AI brain is probably the closest thing to creating Paul 2.0, if that makes sense.
I was going to say, do you give them names, Paul? Do you give them, you don't call them AI brain, surely you give them
Yeah,
a
so
name?
we'd call it the project name. Yeah, but you could call it Jeff if you wanted, Sean. It's up to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's up to you. So that was the concept. And then I guess looking at, if that's the goal, then it's like, okay, so how do you do it? So we went through several iterations. The first version we tried, we realized the first job for any company, if you're going to do this, is to collate all the information, because often it's in different systems anyway. You know, you'll have your project management system, you'll have your like document repository, Google Drive, you know, SharePoint, whatever. So you've got to get it all into a structure that an LLM can understand. You've also got to go with the fundamental principle of a process is bad data in, bad data out. So you've really got to work on making sure the documentation is correct and up to date. And then effectively, there's lots of different ways to achieve this, but you connect it to an LLM. And so we explored loads of stuff. We were doing API connections. We were trying to pull data real time. We looked at Vercel and different solutions and technical solutions to collate this data and make it real time. In the end, fast forward, GPTs themselves have changed massively over the years in terms of what they're capable of. So the real breakthrough, I guess, was when we started to this is probably not the breakthrough, this is the challenge. When we started to query the AI brain after we'd done all the setup, it was coming out with absolute gobbledygook. So it was hallucinating. Like, I know people call it hallucinating, but it was effectively, if you think about AI as autocomplete, it was trying to go, oh yeah, this is this, like, and it was just incorrect. So we lost trust in it. So accuracy was a massive problem. And then we went back and looked at why the accuracy was so bad. You have to go back to the input data and also the way that we tried to update it, the LLM and everything else. So fast forward to where we are now, just to give some context, is it's so powerful and so accurate. We took the thinking a step further. And what we've actually done is, if you imagine every business has like standard operating procedures, so you'll have processes and playbooks for how an estimate is created, how a sprint is planned, how you market your podcast, how you market your business's website, your SEO strategy, everything. So we've spent the last month creating the GGA AI brain. So it understands every aspect of our business. So normally what happens is people create standard operating procedures and try and document all their business and systemize it, but it sits in SharePoint or it sits in Google Drive or whatever. Imagine now that you load that into an LLM and you can do exactly what I said on a project basis, but across your entire company. And imagine how that helps with onboarding new staff. Imagine how that helps with creating new content. Imagine how that helps with resolving commercial issues or like points of conflict within the team or whatever. You've got something that knows what the process should be, and you can kind of have a conversation with it securely and really get into the realms of it's a developer, it's a HR manager, it's a project lead, it's everything you want it to be. And the way it's programmed is it has those roles defined, and it knows people within the team who's using it and responding accordingly. So if the finance person asks, they're going to get a financially accurate question, versus if a project manager asks, it'll be much more towards agile and scrum and stuff.
So if you're in a real world situation and you've got a customer and you probably are using Zoom or you're using some sort of video software to record the conversations with the client,
Yeah.
you've got something like Fireflies, I presume.
Yeah, we use Fireflies, yeah.
Okay, so you then upload that.
Yeah, so obviously every Fireflies conversation we have at the start of the meeting, we always ask permission. What we've noticed, this is quite interesting, is we used to use Fathom, we migrated to Fireflies. When I go into client meetings now or prospect meetings, so many more people have got an AI note taker. You know, it used to be an abnormal sort of thing, like we were in the minority. Now I go on, and a client we were on with last week has now got Fireflies, so everybody can see the advantage to it. Obviously, corporate policy dictates whether they're even allowed in the meeting. But if they're allowed, then yeah, we have all those meeting notes, we have all those summaries, all those transcripts, and we've even got to the point where we have automations that get those transcripts and then do other processes with those transcripts to update the brain, but also to trigger automations to say create the pre-call plan for the next meeting. So it's already auto-generated.
Did you send those notes to the customer to say this?
Yeah,
is
so we share everything. Yeah, I think one big thing with all of this is it's just transparency of process, isn't it? Is your clients need to understand that as a company we are actively embracing AI, and we are not a company that are rejecting it. We are openly embracing it, and along that way they learn a lot of stuff as well, and they adopt a lot of stuff. And I think the Fireflies thing is a good example. So yeah, our processes improve, our accuracy improves, their speed improves, and I think clients observe and adopt, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So taking the concept of Jeff, we're calling it Jeff now. Do you only solely go to Jeff for Green Gorilla Apps information on the business, or do you have? I think you did say this. I think you said you have a separate LLM for each client.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yes. So explore that a bit more. So how many have you got?
So that's a really good question, Sean, and nicely preempted. So when we first started this, we created effectively an LLM per task. It wasn't even user role, it was per task. So for instance, I write a weekly newsletter called the Automation Playbook. So I had an LLM just for idea generation, content creation. I edit everything, but I ingest the real ideas, the real things that have happened in that week, and we can come back onto that. So there'd be an LLM just dedicated to that. So we would have tens, if not 50 GPTs, and every time we did a task, as well as documenting it in Notion as a playbook, which we took from Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time book, which is like a Loom video and how to do this task and how frequently and what the checklists are. We then create a GPT or an LLM, depending on what it is, that just knows about that task. The big upgrade that has enabled us to bring it more together is chat have massively increased the number of files that you can have in a GPT, and also the file size.
I was going to say, because that must be, is there a limitation?
Yeah, so it's 20. If you do it as a GPT, which is the easiest advice I'd give anyone, if you don't want to get too technical and too automated, a GPT is a perfect starter. You can do 20 files, but the crux is each file can be up to 500 meg. So when we go back to things like your standard operating procedures, we have one 150-page PDF that's probably about 200 meg that's just on our marketing plan for the quarter. And it knows everything about this podcast. It knows everything about our LinkedIn strategy. It knows everything about our automation playbook. So, but it's within the overall GGA brain. So when I go on, I can just literally say, I could have a conversation with it today and say, I'm meeting Sean for the podcast, and we're talking about the AI brain. I could say, what are 3 things that listeners would like to know? And it knows who you are. It knows what the name of the podcast is. It knows what the audience demographic is. It knows what we're trying to achieve by being like human, and talk about the insanity of running a software company in this age and stuff. So I think that's the huge power of it. And then you can get really sophisticated and you can get the updates into it, or you can build your own LLM and stuff. But to wrap that kind of section up, the capacity to import a lot of information is huge. So we've gone down the route now of one, AI brain to rule them all. And then in answer to your original question, but we keep the project separate. So we don't want the project inside the GGA standard operating procedures. We want the project to be its own GPT. And again, whether you use Claude, Gemini, OpenAI, or build your own LLM and host it, the principles are the same. It's all about the quality of the data in. AI at the end of the day, in the majority of what we do, is text based, and it's a language model, and it needs good context. So actually spending the time properly documenting and building the data into it in a way that it's almost like prompt written. Like the actual data, the way we import it, the way we structure it is very much for the large language model, not for a human. So it wouldn't be, we have a Notion that is for a team member, but then we have a like kind of AI equivalent that goes into the data set. And you can do anything. If you connect data, I mean, one way we could take it, which is what we explored at the start, is instead of doing it as like PDFs in GPT and stuff, there's nothing stopping you creating a database in whatever system you want to use, structuring it all, and then having the large language model talk to that via an API, and that's perfectly possible as well. So there's lots of ways to achieve it. The context of this conversation was to say how we are doing it from a very high level. Hopefully I've explained that the principle is we want to have an accurate conversation with something that has a memory, that understands what we're trying to achieve, and we can get accurate answers and information back out to make a decision. And often, this is another thing that I've observed, is we use Tuple. So we'll be on Tuple, which is like a screen sharing thing, say me and Erin, the project manager, and we'll have the AI brain open, and we're collaboratively conversing with it. So she's typing, I can type, and we're using that to both test it, but also improve it, if that makes sense.
But also, going back to the memory issue, I was also thinking about the limitations of how much it was obviously gathering up. You could be gathering up years and years and years worth of data.
Yeah.
On Jeff. So Jeff's brain is getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Is there a limitation, or do you just spend more money on the tokens? How does it work on the cost side?
From what we've seen, it's very hard to get to. I mean, we're a small business, so it's very hard to hit 20 files, 500 meg of content. So we haven't hit anywhere near the limit. Some things we've split. So, like, for instance, their marketing plan is probably split over 2 PDFs. It's probably a gig of data. But other things, our finance system's incredibly lean and just use zero, and it's like there's not much to it. So other things will be smaller. But
and that's a good point. You mentioned zero there. So we use zero as well. So are you doing any automation there so the business or Jeff knows about how your business is running?
So this is exactly the point. So if we move away from the concept of OpenAI and GPTs in this context, the concept of an AI brain to me is this knowledge base of everything that you wanted to know about a subject. We spoke about data in, data out. How you get the data into it is completely up to you. So if you look at tools like N8N, that will automate it. So you can have an automated connection between Zero and an LLM. So, like you can pretty much in N8N program any integration that you want, whereas Zapier and Make have more like off-the-shelf integrations. N8N, I would say, is the most powerful and versatile. You can also self-host it as well, so you can keep the cost down. But that's an automation tool that answers that question. You can determine whether you want your brain to be manually updated periodically by a team member, or whether you want it to be truly connected to all these different sources. And there's probably pros and cons for both. But yeah, in the context of what you just said, is it possible to have an LLM that's connected to Zero, that's responsibility is a financial one, that's programmed to look at your P&L, identify trends, both positives and negatives, look for strategies to mitigate any downward trends? 100%. 100% you can do that today. And that's just a combination of connecting LLM to Zero or whatever your finance package is.
That's incredible.
And that's the way you want to go, really, is when I was thinking about this and this episode, you have to go. Everything has to go back to, well, what's the point? Why would you do this? And I think it's because you've now got AI. When it first came out and we all first started writing poems on chat, and it was like single shot prompting, was like it was a standalone chat window, and it was incredible, but it was like standalone. Now AI, and this isn't recent, this is like for the past year and a half at least, is so connectable. You can connect it to data. When you give AI data and you automate certain things with agents, which we can talk about in another episode, um, it's unbelievably powerful. And I think people don't really understand truly what is possible even today. And like you said it earlier, the pace of change and what's going to be possible by the end of this year and what's going to be possible in 18 months. This is the worst that AI is going to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I've totally coined that from somebody else who was delivering an AI thing, but it was a really valid point. Is the AI that we use today is the worst it's going to be, and it'll be better tomorrow, and it'll be better the day after. And Sam Altman has just released a whole thing about the AI agents they're rolling out, and it's like, I think whatever you do today to harness its power securely, and you have to understand the privacy side of it as well, and how you have to configure different LLMs so that they don't train on your model. That's a critical thing, but you can ask it how to do that. But why wouldn't you want the classic thing of an all-seeing oracle that kind of never sleeps, never takes a day's holiday, never forgets anything, is there 24 hours a day? And it's literally, you talked about in another episode, you can do it all from your mobile phone.
Yeah.
It's just, we've never lived in a time in history when this has been possible.
And I think you mentioned it really. You got the point is that the fact that it's remembering every single conversation. It's got your Fireflies meetings with the client, emails. Presumably, you can also feed that through. So every single correspondence you have with that client, we know as human beings we forget things.
Yeah.
It's not going to forget, is it?
And it's also, I mean, like a really good example. I think we did speak about this, so apologies to reiterate it, but it's not just, it's not that it just knows what we know. It, depending on the data you provide it knows more than it knows way more than us. So in that instance, if I ask it a question, or Ollie and my team ask it a question, we're coming from the angle of what we understand, like our perspectives. But within it goes back to data in, data out. It's got context across the whole thing. So it will help you uncover things where you'll ask it about one thing. And if you ask it and prompt it in the right way, it will expand and go, well, these other things are affected. And I hadn't even considered that. If I do this strategic thing, which I can do goal planning with it, it knows. So, just from a business thing, and we're really transparent as a company. So we do monthly strategic meetings, and every month we reiterate our 12-month goals and our quarterly goals. So they're loaded into it. So whenever I'm talking about something like, I don't know, a LinkedIn post that I'm about to write, it can tell me whether I'm even congruent with what I'm trying to achieve. Just imagine the accountability of saying, oh, I've had this shiny new object idea. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole with Replit. I'm going to build this thing out, and it can go, whoa, how's that going to get you to your 12-month goal? It's just, it's every role under a business that you need that you don't even necessarily employ at the moment. And you see stuff online where people are saying, there was a post, I really apologise to the guy who posted it because it was brilliant, but he was basically saying he just had a board meeting with Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and I think two of the people around the table were passed. And it was just like, okay, it's a tongue-in-cheek way of doing it, but every business now has the ability to have specific roles and a board of directors. Even if you're a solopreneur, you can have something that knows everything about your business, even if that's one PDF, and you can build on it and you can get it to understand, and you can even then say, what are my gaps? What am I missing? Okay, I'll plug those into it. So yeah, it's ultimately how you maintain it, how you automate it is another big step, and that's where we are. But I would say manual curation at this stage is absolutely critical.
Thanks, Paul. That was incredible to dive into what we're calling the AI brain, or Jeff. We explored how these systems think, where the power lies, and more importantly, their limitations. Paul obviously was discussing an amazing array of different things there, but I hope it gives you, the listeners, some confidence that there's, the sky's the limit with what you can do. So thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to join us on Control Alt Dev for more tech talks that challenge, inspire, and of course inform. Until then, stay curious, stay creative, and keep on coding.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.